Do you want to talk briefly, Amanda, about some of the just underlying values of your business? I mean, we've talked about, for example, how the fan experience always has to be fucking awesome, which is why we're sending out such elaborate pieces of vinyl.
Yeah, I mean, this is always weird for me to talk about because I think I just take it for granted, and I assume that all artists and musicians want to have a relationship with their fans. And it's actually only after, being in this business for so long and talking to so many other musicians that I realize there's a large spectrum of how social artists want to be and how close with their fans they do want to be. I happen to fall on one side of that spectrum, which for something like Kickstarter and crowdfunding and direct-to-fan makes me very lucky. But from the very early days of the Dresden Dolls, Brian and I signed after every show, not because our label was telling us to or our management was telling us to or anyone was telling us to. We just wanted to. We wanted to meet all of these people. And Brian and I used to talk about this a lot. I mean, we were both the sorts of kids in high school who believed that we would find our friends and our community and our people through music. And it was like finally starting a band and finally getting on the road. It was almost like the means to the end to find the people. It wasn't the other way around. Not every artist necessarily feels that way, but we always did. And we loved signing after shows. It was almost as enjoyable and sometimes even more enjoyable than the shows themselves to hang out with the fans and get their stories and see their art and kind of have a post-show party. And that was always, that was the foundation. And then as the internet grew and grew and the possibilities on the internet grew, it was like, well, now we can do this on the internet. We can do it through our email list. We can do it through the blog. Now I can do it through Twitter.
Kendall's at Kickstarter, and I think you guys, we were going to talk a little bit about what makes a good Kickstarter campaign, but I think you guys, instead of talking about that here, you guys should just take a really close look at Amanda's Kickstarter bundles and how involved those bundles are, both in terms of the quality of the bundles and the involvement of the artist. But Kendall, can you talk a little bit about, you were talking about the value of Kickstarter beyond the financial.
I mean, obviously Amanda's campaign is a really great model, and yeah, everybody should take a look at it. I spend a lot of time talking to musicians and encouraging them to look at Amanda's project as sort of a model for their own. What I think is so, first of all, remarkable is that, and important to point out, is this was Amanda's 4th Kickstarter project that she launched. It's the one that you're most well known for, but you've done a lot of little projects along the way, so it wasn't your first sort of interaction. And it's the one that you've gotten the most attention for because the numbers speak for themselves. 24,000 people and over $1 million is great, but people focus so much on the money, and crowdfunding is a term that gets applied to Kickstarter a lot, and that is what we are, but it's not a word that you'll find on our website anywhere. It's not something that we talk about because I think crowdfunding and the idea of direct to fan, it's a very limiting term in that it's all about sales, it's all about money, and what we hear more than anything from artists who have run campaigns, whether they're looking for $1,000 or $100,000 for an album, is that while the money that they got was great, it helped them do the thing that they wanted to do. The feedback from their fans, the ability to talk about their work in public, and to have a promotional platform to do that was much more valuable than the money that they raised. It's really about the community that you build around your work, and you as an artist, you put your work out into the world, but it doesn't mean anything unless people respond to it, unless people are there to kind of to give you that feedback and to become a part of it.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about that as well, just really quickly, the direct to fan, because you see it even with Topspin?
Sure. Yeah, and I couldn't agree with Kendall more that the sort of money focus and the term direct to fan and crowdfunding, it gets lost amongst the sort of, it's less about the general size of your audience. If you're here and you're an artist and you don't feel as though your audience is as big as Amanda Palmer's right now today, that's okay. It's about the depth of your connection with that audience. That's why those, the Justin Bieber numbers and the Lady Gaga numbers and Amanda Palmer's numbers are so interesting, because the depth of Amanda's connections with her fans, that 25,000 people who bought her record and when she was on the record label, the 25,000 people that funded her on Kickstarter, that's a deep, deep connection. And that's having the connection at all times and having it be consistent is really important, not just around a record release or a tour.
So Martin, what's in it for you as a label? Although in a sense, you were sort of our distribution and marketing partner more than an old school version of a label, but what's in it for Cooking Vinyl in a scenario like this, and what are some of the challenges?
We got very lucky in 1993 when we signed Billy Bragg, and his manager, basically Pete Jenner, taught me a hell of a lot about different ways to work with artists. And we did our first what we call services deal, which is completely identical to the deal we did with Amanda. And we just saw ourselves as providing a kind of white label service for Billy, and doing all the jobs that we normally do, but with a different structure where he owns all the rights. We take a percentage off the top, just like a manager would. He pays all the costs, and he gets the lion's share of the money. And it's a very simple model, and it creates a strong partnership rather than the traditional confrontational record company model. And glad to say, 20 years later, Billy's still working with us. He's playing at South by this year, if you want to check him out. But in terms of what we did for this, we did the things a traditional record company does, which often people get carried away about the success of Kickstarter, which was a great success. I mean, I can't get my head around all the logistics you must have gone through between you. I'd justify our place in the food chain on this, in that we did, as Vicky said, we released the record in 30 countries, probably within about 6 weeks of signing the actual contract. Mm-hmm. We actually put press and marketing, active press and marketing, in about 20 countries. We did promo trips in UK, Germany, France, and Italy, and we could have done more if Amanda had had the time, but she was pulled in. I mean, I think for every opportunity there was far less time available on the planet than could do it all.